reason Chicago got into this mess was Mayor Daley decided to do a magical program called Renaissance 2010, where he just went out and he said, we're going to close 100 schools and we're going to turn them over to charters, and we're going to dispatch the kids to the surrounding communities. And what he did in the process was he decimated communities, and enrollment began to decline. And when enrollment declines, you lose money. You lose money. No matter how favorable the formula, you lose money. The reason I built the huge cash reserves was I put programs into schools to attract students, so I had reserves much larger than anticipated. But I don't support the moratorium. Second thing that I want to say is I do support the scholarship. I will never oppose initiatives to expand educational opportunities for those who do not have the financial means, like people who come from affluent families. So at the end of the day, I support the scholarship.
LaShawn, you're for the moratorium. Why?
So I believe that families should have the choice to send their kids to the best school that's going to meet their needs. But you only see these charter schools popping up in poor communities. And the reason why charter schools pop up is because there's a problem in the area and we need to open up another school that we're going to promise the families that we're going to do better by you. Well, if you're going to be the mayor, then your job is to make sure that the community has schools that's going to be good. Why would you allow another charter school to open next door or across the street from a school that you have vowed to make sure is going to meet the needs of the families? So if you have a candidate that's telling you that he or she is okay with more charter schools, then they're not committed to the traditional public schools and what they're meant to do.
But LaShawn, you're from the West Side.
That's right. So let me tell you, on the West Side.
Well, let me tell you.
All right.
Tim King, Urban Prep.
Yeah, okay. That's not on the West Side.
Well, yeah.
It's not.
Well, he's got a school on the West Side. It's just the charter just got revoked.
Okay, but
and so but Tim King has a model. He's building a better mousetrap than the neighborhood schools. That's the demand. All African American men. Right. Why should Tim King be limited if he's building a better mousetrap than the neighborhood schools?
Because if I'm the mayor, I'm going to make sure that the school that's in that neighborhood is right. Let me give you an example. You got on Cicero and right by Lake Street, you have two schools. You have a charter school, and in the same building you have a traditional public school. Now one side has air conditioning, the other side doesn't. Now how could a mayor allow that? There's no reason to have two systems that's going to confuse. Now remember, I'm for choice. But I'm telling you, there's no reason for me to say that I'm going to allow another system to disrupt what I have vowed to make sure is going to work. The only reason why you say let's bring more charter schools in is because you're throwing your hand in and you're saying that I can't do anything for the traditional neighborhood schools. The same money that you're going to give to the business people not educators, you give it to the neighborhood schools and you stay committed to doing those schools the way they were meant to be. That's all.
Thanks, Jerry, you're opposed to the moratorium. Why are you opposed?
I'm opposed to moratorium because I think charters, the original purpose was to offer alternative means of education, or alternative styles of education. So I'm for charters so that they can, for instance, we have an educator we're speaking with who wants to open up a charter on the southeast side, which would be female STEM classes, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Unique styles of learning or unique programs are great for charters. I agree with LaShawn, they should not replace the neighborhood schools, and I think charters should be subject to residency requirements and same administrative pay that CPS schools are, non-charters are. So that's the nuance for me.
Our teachers don't have certificates.
Thank you, Jerry. So we're going to switch. I'm going to stay with you, Jerry, because you're on the top of my list here, and I'm going to switch over to city spending and city services. So this is a specific question for you. The city of Chicago alone, not including sister agencies like the Park District, CPS, or the CTA, is set to spend over $10 billion next year, or this year. What percentage of that do you believe is wasteful, and how would you address reducing the total spend, if at all?
wasteful would be a guess. Pick a number, 10%, 20%. Maybe we'll find out more as this federal investigation proceeds. But I would seek to consolidate departments and possibly city agencies and sister agencies. So I would take a look at combining the park district and the city. Perhaps looking at the water department and marrying that up with the MWRD. So, does that answer your question?
That's it. The questions for the audience, absolutely. So let's go to Dr. Wilson. Very specific question here, sir. The Bureau of Sanitation's budget is going from $161 million in 2018 to $164 million in 2019. Would you support a pilot program that would open garbage collection up for bidding in one ward or neighborhood to a third party such as Waste Management, Groot, or Republic, if it could be done at 10% less cost with no negative impact on service?
As a business person, in trying to get the cost down, you must bid out contracts so that it better help the citizen in the neighborhood. It's helped the small business, give them an opportunity to bid on those contracts versus your person that you favor the most and big businesses, and you don't get a shot at it. We also should take to make sure the business process is fair. You got to create some of the grants so the small businesses can compete, the payroll, buying trucks and things of that nature as well. But you also got to deal with the situation with the budget. I don't believe we have a budget problem per se in the city of Chicago. I think it's a waste of spend. It's about management. I think when you got a $10 billion budget and your payroll is $7 billion versus San Francisco and a few others is like $3-something billion. And a lot of those jobs is there, and that money being paid out is from a lot of people from Indiana, Michigan that don't live here as well. And we got to get a hold of that. And let me just say this too, because I wanted to talk a little bit about those schools just for a second here. I believe that when you allow the schools to suffer in one neighborhood and people doesn't get the education, things of that nature, and you drain the resources out of there, it's create more problems like crime and things of that nature. We got to treat all neighborhoods equal and fair and work towards better Chicago.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. I think I got a yes out of that. Is that correct? Okay. So next question is to Mr. Vallis. Would you support the hiring of consultants in efficiency and quality improvement tools, such as Lean and Six Sigma, to evaluate all city functions? And if their solutions led to a reduction in city jobs with no negative impact to services, would you move forward with those recommendations and proposals?
Well, you mentioned a specific consulting firm. I would bring in the experts that I brought in now in 4 major school district turnarounds. When I took over the Chicago Public Schools, or even in Philadelphia, rebuilt the schools in New Orleans, I was able to significantly reduce expenditures. We have $1 billion that we've got to put back into the pension system. We've got to put $1 billion in over the next 5 years to reach that funding threshold. And I've laid out a plan that talks about how we can do that. And half of that money, I believe, can be secured through budget cuts and through expenditures. And the areas that I've identified, are areas like workman's comp, now that we can pull it out of Finance Committee, negotiating better health care contracts with our providers, overtime. I mean, the police department alone, because they haven't filled the police vacancies, has been spending, on the average, between $50 to $125 million in overtime because they haven't filled the vacancies. I know, because my overtime budget was $38 million, yet one year, the overtime budget for police alone was $175 million. You can look at contractual services. You can go in and you can look at reorganizations. You can look at what, the city controls $20 billion in revenue, not $10 billion in revenue. It's the airports, it's the enterprise funds, it's water, it's sewer, it's the park district, it's the CHA. You don't think you can find 5-6% savings in those budgets combined and address the pension funding issue and be able to cap property taxes? And I painstakingly articulated how I would do it, and it's online, it's on video. So the bottom line is, damn right I can balance this budget, and I can find savings, because I've done it in 4 major cities, in 4 major school districts that have been on crisis. I want to make one more comment just about charters, though. I believe that we don't need to open up any new schools. But if there's a unique, as Jerry said, if there's a unique charter proposal, when I ran the schools, we opened 15 charters, not 120 charters. What you've got to do is you can't create overcapacity, and I think that's what I think that's what all of us are saying. What they did was they just created overcapacity with no accountability, and that started the decline.
Thank you. So just to pin you down, so I heard darn right you'll cut spending. If that spending leads to layoffs, not through attrition, but right off the bat, we don't need all these people, we can do with 5% less, would you pull the trigger?
Well, look, I'm not afraid to close positions that are not needed, and we've got to look at, the use of technology, and let's face it, do you think for a second that the city has entered the 21st century when it comes to the deployment of technology? How painstakingly it is just to get your property tax deferment, the senior citizen property tax deferment extended? I mean, so at the end of the day, I'm all for efficiencies, but let me talk about stupid privatization for a second. This is stupid privatization. Like the Chicago Public Schools, stupid privatization. Aramark, Sodexo, getting rid of the engineers. Look, they got rid of the engineers, right? Who's going to pay into their pension system? They owe $300 million into the pension system. You are. That's called stupid privatization. So when you go out and you privatize services, three things happen. You might get cost savings, although the engineers at CPS were willing to match. But no, they were just obsessed with getting rid of them. So Ron could celebrate that. But let me tell you 2 bad things that happen. Number one, you have fewer employees paying into the pension system. When you don't fill police vacancies under Tier 2, the pension system gets worse, not better. Let me tell you a second bad thing that happens. They're not city residents. They're not city residents. So they're not stabilizing neighborhoods on the northeast side or northwest side or southwest side. So at the end of the day, there's such a thing as stupid privatization. And that's what we've had, or I should say pay-to-play privatization. I'm sorry. There is a method to their madness, and that's how to line their pockets and how to generate more campaign contributions.
Thank you, Mr. Dallas. Let's pivot over to John Kozlan. John, would you be open to Chicago instituting a city manager model whereby the administration of city services would be more insulated from the political nature of the mayor's office?
So you're saying put more power in the hands of the people?
One person to run the city like a CEO, chosen by the mayor and maybe confirmed by the city council.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why people elect a mayor. It's just we keep electing mayors who take care of their families and friends. We don't elect mayors who take care of the community. So, I mean, we pay the mayor, what, $200,000+, so I don't think we need to have another position, pay that person over 6 figures with the same job responsibilities. But yes, that's a direct answer. But the other thing is, I don't know what it is, every election, we always have 95 ideas, and then the person gets elected, and then nothing changes. And we were talking about how to make government more efficient and the waste. Chicago is the home of the big 4 auditing firms. We have Deloitte, PwC, EY, and KPMG. Rahm Emanuel, when he was running for election, he said he would do an unbiased forensic audit of all of our city books. But then he got elected, and he never did that. How to identify waste is you let people inside of your books and you simply do an audit. And that's why they get paid to do this. They're very knowledgeable, and that's when we can start to reduce the waste. But we keep, for some reason, have this inertia for a simple idea. These are auditors, they go inside our books and they make changes. They identify the issues. We just have this problem in Chicago where we don't want unbiased people to look at our money. But I will change that. Thank you.
So I'd like to kind of wrap up city spending here. Just a quick round table. Does anybody think that the mayor should have all the power that the mayor currently has? Or should we find ways to restrict the mayor's power through charter changes or an amendment to the state constitution, whatever? Yeah, HR. So just a quick down the line from left to right. Should we restrict the mayor's power, and if so, in what way?
So I would propose one immediately, and that would be to make sure that the mayor loses the power to appoint for the school board. That's one. And of course, the mayor also has the power to pass bills without public hearings, without public notices. That is too much power, and the taxpayers deserve better than that.
Say the question again, because you said something that on charter, not charter schools, but say the question again.
Yeah, so through an ordinance process, right, or a change in the city's governing charter or the state constitution, would you support any methods to restrict the mayor's powers?
Well, first of all, we do have a charter. It was adopted in 1892, and I doubt if anybody up here read it or in the room, but I've gone through it a couple of times. We need a charter commission to limit the power of the mayor, first of all. We do that by reducing the size of the city council. We reduce it by making sure we have term limits, and we take away aldermanic privilege from the alderman. I think all that combined, and having the use of the charter commission, it gets reviewed all the major cities have it. Every 10 to 15 years to see what amendments we need to the charter will dramatically take out, as everybody's talking about the corruption here, the corruption in this city, what we need to do, and I think we have to do it, and maybe the first way is, because I think it's going to be a lot easier to do term limits. You know, and those of you that may know, during the remap, I introduced a map for 35 aldermen. We were one vote short during it, and it would have gone a long way to changing the face of the city council. So the answers, and again, like Sean and I are totally in favor of an elected school board, to take that away, and those are some of the changes and some of the reforms that we need now.
I believe that we must have checks and balance. Check and balance in the mayor's office. Once every 3 months, we must have an audit of each department in the city of Chicago. I'm in business. When I borrow money from the bank, they come out of my book on a quarterly basis. All right? If things get out of line, they'll catch it right then and there. We should not trust politicians openly to damage our citizens. We must make sure that we lower the taxes and make sure that those money not going in politicians' pocketbook and their friend. And let me say too, if you lower taxes, you bring more business into the city of Chicago. You save more citizens in the city of Chicago. We would never get out of this situation until we can lower these taxes and get them in check. Then people can make a living, then you can attract new business, international business. They won't go to Indiana, Arkansas, or Texas. We got to take and do that.
Great. Well, first of all, back to the question. Look, elect a mayor who can manage. You know, we don't need a city manager, we need a mayor who can manage. Second, you're not going to transform the city of Chicago until you end this pay-to-play culture. Let's face it. The government and the Democratic Party is joined at the hip. I said they're like Siamese twins sharing the same organ. That organ is money. That's what they do. They move in and out of government. They move in and out of government. The elected officials become lobbyists, or they get other public sector jobs, or the lobbyists become elected officials. And you need real reform. You're not going to have campaign finance reform until you have term limits. There's nothing that limits the influence of money better than term limits. You also have to limit the ability to earn outside income, or the ability to become a lobbyist and then to go lobby on behalf of clients once you've completed your elected office. I mean, think about it. I mean, Bill Daley talking about limiting outside income or not having members of his or her family. I got two cops at home. None of them ever want to work, want to get into politics, or for that matter, become a streets and sanitation supervisor or whatever. And you also have to get at that core group of individuals who are appointed to these boards. I mean, Gary Chico was on my board. He abstained from voting 500 times on contracts because he was hustling business while he was the president of the school board. So they go and they move from contract, they move from board to board. It's all legal. It's all legal. The little guys get punished. The street cops get punished, not the ones who order the cover-up. It's these, sometimes we finally are getting some big aldermanic fish, but sometimes it's a little alderman. Burke has been doing this for 4 decades. So at the end of the day, what about limiting, what about barring anyone who serves on any board in the city from doing any work, or from doing any contract work, or consultant work, or legal work with anyone else, with any other city agency? You got to get at the pay-to-play cancer that is killing us financially, that is straining our economy and wrecking our reputation. So those are things.
Yeah. Paul, if I could provide some gentle pushback, you talked about $20 billion worth of government controlled by the mayor. It's 100,000 employees. That's 3% of Chicago's population, and you're talking about systemic change. But you don't want to professionalize, compartmentalize, try and separate out the politicization of all of that government and all of those employees, because it all is driven by one person who has the title Chicago mayor. Why not diffuse power away from the mayor's office then?
Look, I don't see why having a mayor and then having a city manager improves the situation. You've got to get at the heart of why we can't elect quality people and put them into positions of responsibility. It's because, look, do you notice who's up? Do you notice who's running commercials? It's people who are part of the political establishment. We look for these simplistic solutions. Oh, we'll just hire a city manager. Oh, great. We've had our share of corrupt city managers too. If you don't get at the root causes of corruption, which is the pay-to-play system, what's preventing the mayor or the city council from hiring a city manager who is equally corrupt?
All right, we got Jerry. What about that? The concentration of power.
Term limits, and the city council that actually provides the check and balances. I think you do that by eliminating outside work. Any city council members, rotating council chairmanships of committees, key committees, rather than the mayor appointing that, rotated amongst council members. That power does not get concentrated in what winds up being too often just a tool of the mayor. So I think those two go a long way.
John.
The biggest issue in Chicago is that voters have simply lost confidence in our city government. Is there anybody in this room that feels proud about City Hall? It's terrible that every time we turn on the news, that it's corruption. And then I open the paper and they say, oh, Tony Preckwinkle and Bill Daley and Susanna Mendoza leading the polls. And it's terrible, because those 3 candidates, if you elect them again, we're going to be talking about crime, education, and city finances in the year 2023. And we need to change that. And you can't open up these papers, because I believe the papers are biased too. Some of them are owned by corrupt people. But again, we have to work together here, because these politicians, they want to keep their power. And power equals money to them. But I'm thankful to be on the stage with a lot of these guys up here, and yeah, everybody, just making sure there's no corrupt politicians. I'm thankful because we all have choices, There's 14 candidates. 4 of them, I swear, you could just group them together and say, that's one bunch. Somebody said, hey, who do you think, Preckwinkle or Daley or Mendoza? I said, well, that's like asking, who do you want to win the Super Bowl, Tom Brady or Tom Brady? They're the same people. We can change that now, but we have to do it by voting and getting out there and working together.
Corrupt people in the papers, I guess, John. AFL-CIO endorsement.
Actually, none of us will.
Yeah, that's probably true. Let's start with Bob. Some people have mentioned this. Let's talk about it specifically. Public sector pensions. The 5 city pensions are less than 50% funded. Chicago Police and Fire are worse, both under 25% funded. That in actuarial jargon is called death spiral. Paul mentioned $1 billion balloon payment due next year, but it's a lot bigger than that, isn't it? You're talking about $40 billion in unfunded liabilities between the fire and police, $10 billion in unfunded with CPS, teachers. So what is to be done structurally about city pensions? Is it a tier 3? Is it 401k? Is it borrowing $10 billion as long as the bond markets will let us, like Ron wanted to do out the door? What do we do, Bob?
In 2010 on the floor, I proposed 401ks, IRAs, a complete change in the structure of our pension. And again, the person who opposed me got up during the budget amendments and vote was Ed Burke. So you can tell where this was going. I believe we can structurally change things, but no, we don't owe $1 billion next year. We owe $400 million next year. And it increases to 6, 8, and then $1 billion. We'll be paying $2 billion into our pension fund. I do believe we can cut the size of government. Maybe, I don't want to go as far because politicians throw out numbers, but in Streets and Sand, I proposed something about in 2010 also of a true grid system that would have saved us $70 million. Instead, they imposed some other grid system that made no sense at all. And how to pick up garbage, how to deal with the issues. And I would not go to waste management for anything at this point. I just want you to know that, Matt, okay? I mean, you threw that company out, but we have to be very careful on the outsiders who really are the insiders on these contracts. You know, Dan, you and I have argued this a number of times. And so we'll argue it again.
Seems like a perfect venue.
Yes. You know, I'm not in favor of raising any taxes. And again, I think we can cut the size of government maybe by 20% to a third, depending on how the grants are. Not cutting the employees, but there are ways that we can cut our government and make it more efficient. Now, how do you raise $400 million by September 1st of this year without raising property taxes? September 1st. You have to get it ready for your budget address. Well, he and I have argued about the commuter tax. It's the new daily thing. It's not a job killer. Whoever says it's a job killer does not realize that we are the economic center. Jobs are here. People from Wisconsin, Indiana, the suburbs, if they pay 1% of their income, and there's 800,000 of them that come into the city every day, it would be $300 million. They want safe streets. They want an ambulance if something happens to them. They want all the qualities. I remember a woman came up to me and she said, now you know, and she's coming out of McDonald's. Oh, you know, I pay sales taxes here. I said, yeah, but all you're eating is a McDonald's. She owned a farm, 17 acres, 20-some horses up in McHenry County, and she couldn't pay a little bit extra money to help us because we are the people that pay. Now, you lift video poker, that's $75 million. If we can't find the money in this budget, as I said, we got to cut, well then, you know, we will find it. But you know, we will be paying $2 billion into the pension system. It's statutorily required out of a 2010 ordinance that is not going to be changed because I went down and LaShawn knows to fight against that because of what was happening with our city budget.
Okay, Bob. So, thank you. Thank you. I just got to move on.
You don't want to argue it now?
Yeah, I wish if it was just you and me. Willie, CPS continues to pick up 2/3 of the teacher contributions to their pensions. Is that something that should continue, or do we have to look at the contribution levels from employees, teachers, and frankly, it may not be popular in this room, police and fire as well?
Well, again, I want to speak from a business perspective, right? Here's what I would do. I would give weekend breaks, tax holiday coming to Chicago, and see how many more people come to Chicago and shop. Then that would ordinarily help the businesses take care of their taxes. I would, of course, like I always proposed before, to put the casino in Chicago out somewhere on Navy Pier someplace and legalize marijuana and those type of things, open up mag field. But the most important thing, we got to lower taxes to attract business here. If you continue to raise it, you can't take care of the pension situation. Because as you raise them, you run citizens out of Chicago, and you run business out of Chicago. It ain't but one way. You got to lower taxes, bring people back into the city of Chicago, and bring company into the city of Chicago. Bring those international. Other ways, they've been raising taxes all along to pay for this and pay for that. And you got to get rid of the corruption. That's the only way you can balance this budget with pension and anything else. That's from a business perspective, and I guess I don't know no other way of doing it. I'll be frank with you.
Thanks, Willie. Paul. Well, just let me just ask something too, since we had this little spat about concentration of power of the mayor's office. In LA, power is diffused away from the mayor. Their pensions are 78% funded. What does LA know that Chicago doesn't?
Well, you know, there are other cities that don't have mayoral managers, and those pension systems are fully funded, so it really depends on the leadership. The point that I'm trying to make is, look, my approach has always been to assemble management teams who can manage the city. That's how I converted a $1.4 billion structural deficit into a $1 billion cash balance when I left the Chicago Public Schools. Because we engaged in policies that grew the district. That's a fact. Check out the BGA, who does the fact, the campaign fact check. So at the end of the day, that's how you do it. So you assemble a team. You assemble a team who can manage the budget. You also elect the mayor who knows how to manage the budget, who's done it, who has that track record. So we can talk about creating a separate institutional mechanisms for someone to run the city. Why even elect the mayor then? We're going to elect a political head, and we're going to, who's going to pick? Who's going to pick that manager? The point that I was making is, if you don't end the pay-to-play culture, even if you had this system, this idyllic system, what would prevent you from selecting a city manager who wasn't part of the pay-to-play culture too? So you've got to get at the core root on why there's institutional corruption in the city of Chicago, as I've articulated.
And
can I say something about pensions?
Quickly.
Okay, well, no, this is really important because the answer is not that quick. You asked about 401ks. Look, it would be great. 401ks works perfectly if everybody migrated to a 401k. But if you decided to just do a 401k for Tier 2 employees, guess what? The Tier 2 employees are now subsidizing the Tier 1 employees. You would immediately bankrupt the system. So you may like 401ks, but the bottom line is they don't work unless everybody is in it. Second thing is, we're going to, Tier 2, what are we going to have, Tier 3? I'm surprised that Tier 2 employees aren't suing, because the Tier 2 employees will eventually pay much more into the pension system than they will ever get back. They will, that's just a fact. So what I've done, and whether you like it or not, what I've done is I've laid out how to address the pension funding issue. I've articulated what our state agenda should be. I articulated what I'm going to cut at the local level, and what we will then be able to do through natural revenue growth. So I'm looking for solutions, because if anybody thinks there's going to be some grand compromise, Pritzker and labor and business are all going to go to Springfield, and they're going to get a change to the constitutional amendment to have a